Before the Space Wolves went a bit mad with the Thunder Wolves and the Wolfen, they had the Wolf Guard. They're still here, and they're still good. Hello and welcome back to Auspex Tactics, the strategy-focused 40k channel, where we're all about getting the most out of our miniatures on the tabletop. In today's video, we'll be continuing in our Space Wolf reviews, looking at the Wolf Guard, both the Power Armoured and the Terminator Armoured variants. Sadly, I believe the Bike Wolf Guard squad has gone to Warhammer Legends, so we'll be focusing on the two in the Codex at the moment. I know the Space Wolves can technically take Cataphractii and Tartarus Terminator Wolf Guard as well, though these pretty much follow the same datasheet that they do in Codex Space Marines. They're just a little bit better in close combat due to hitting on +1 due to Hunters Unleashed. I've already made a separate video on those, so I'm not going to really go over that here. So in this video we're going to look at the datasheets for the Wolf Guard in Power Armour and Terminator Armour, any obvious buffs or combos on the battlefield, and how I would run them in Space Wolves lists. They're very flexible and they have lots of decent viable options. In the background, the Wolf Guard are the greatest warriors of the Space Wolf Great Companies. They lead their packs into battle and form the honour guard of the Wolf Lord at the head of the company. Unlike other chapters, age is no guarantee of progressing to the Wolf Guard. You must demonstrate your bravery and prowess on the battlefield to be able to progress. Being part of the Wolf Guard has certain advantages, such as access to a far greater array of relics and weapons, such as the chapter's precious suits of Terminator armour. So let's see what these elites of the Space Wolves can do on the battlefield. We'll start by taking a look at the standard Wolf Guard pack first then. Wolf Guard are an elite's choice for Codex Space Wolves, and they cost 14 points a head and have the profile of a standard Space Marine veteran. In addition, for 2 extra points, one of them must be a Wolf Guard pack leader who is particularly fighty and has 3 attacks. At base they're armed with a bolt gun, bolt pistol and frag and crack grenades. Any member of the Wolf Guard pack can replace its bolt gun with either a plasma pistol, storm shield or a weapon from the melee or combo weapons list. And they may also replace their bolt pistol with again either a plasma pistol, a storm shield or an item from just the melee weapons list, so you can't take 2 combi weapons basically. This gives them quite a lot of flexibility, being able to take a combi weapon and a melee weapon, or one of either of those plus a storm shield, which is quite nice. In general, being tactical squad Space Marine equivalents, they are reasonably fragile for their points cost, so I would pretty much as the default arm them all with a storm shield for an additional 2 points. From there you can either decide whether you want to be a little bit more melee or shooting focused. Out of the combi weapons you can go tooling them up with combi melters, plasmas and flamers. It's not too bad damage output, but I do feel that you pay a bit of a premium for what you get. My advice with shooting weapons is as per normal that the Storm Bolter is pretty darn good. Wolf Guard armed with Storm Shields and Storm Bolters are decently effective at shooting, pretty tanky, and even with no melee equipment at all, they still pack a punch in the fight phase with 3 attacks with Shock Assault at +1 to hit with Hunters Unleashed. They're absolutely great at chewing through light infantry, both in the shooting phase and in the fight phase. In general, if you are taking a decent sized squad of these, I think it's definitely worth souping them up with an extra combat weapon or 2. You can get any of the fancy Space Wolf combat weapons, including chainsaws, lightning claws, wolf claws, all the power weapons and frost axes and frost swords, but the 2 that I'm most interested in are the Power Fist and Thunderhammer, as well as helping you out against heavy infantry, they'll also help you out against vehicles decently, and I'd pretty much take one of these as standard on the Wolf Guard pack leader at the very least, as having 4 attacks hitting on 3s with one of these weapons is going to do a heck of a lot of damage. They also have the option to take jump packs, which are 5 points extra per model. I know it's not particularly iconic for the Wolf Guard to be flying through the sky, but gameplay wise it is a really quite powerful option. It gives the Power Armoured squad the option of Deep Strike, even if they don't have any sort of drop pod or anything like that, and when they are on the board they've got much better mobility and can charge things like flyers. It's also interesting that the standard Space Marine Veteran squad isn't able to be deployed in quite the same way. You can't get a Vanguard Veteran squad in Codex Space Marines with Storm Shields and Storm Bolters for example. So this really is quite a powerful option for a Wolf Guard squad. You could have them all drop in, fire off a bunch of Storm Bolters, then charge the enemy and maybe hit them with all of those Strength 4 attacks, plus a couple of hidden Thunderhammers perhaps. That's definitely going to make a mark in terms of damage output. Bear in mind that this will come at a bit of a premium though. A 10-man squad with Storm Bolters and Storm Shields and jump packs and a couple with Thunderhammers is about 260 points. In terms of special rules, they don't have anything in particular different aside from the Angels of Death, which will give them combat doctrines which will be more relevant for tactical for Storm Bolters or melee for extra AP on their attacks plus Savage Fury. Bolter Discipline, which could have them firing bolters or Storm Bolters at longer range more rapidly, and of course Shock Assault, which we all know and love. Overall, they're a very flexible and punchy little veteran squad that can both put out decent range damage and decent damage in close combat. If we move on to take a look at the Terminators now, and these guys are some of the most flexible Terminators in Warhammer 40k at the moment. As standard, you get 5 Terminators, including the Wolfguard Terminator Pack Leader, which costs you an extra 3 points, but also gets you that additional attack. The Wolfguard Terminators cost 23 points base, and at base they come with a Power Fist and Stormbolter, so a standard squad of 5 with the Pack Leader is 173 points. Now the flexibility with their weapon options gives you a lot of decent control. Your options are either to have a Stormbolter and melee weapon, Stormbolter and Storm Shield, or Storm Shield and melee weapon. Being able to have a few Terminators in the squad that just have a Stormbolter and Storm Shield are really cheap and incredibly tanky. They're 27 points for that loadout. Of course they won't do you any good in melee, but it means that you can have a 2+ save, 3+ invul save Terminator that can just be used for tanking enemy hits on the squad, while putting out a decent amount of firepower and a little bit of melee damage, but more importantly, stopping your opponent from removing fancy power weapons with every Terminator that he kills. This is honestly a really powerful option and makes the Terminators far more viable. Again, you can swap out the Stormbolter for one of the combi weapons. I wouldn't myself, but if you really are hurting for some close range anti-tank punch, maybe the Plasma or Melters could be an option. And the Terminator melee weapons are even more de-restricted. You can't get chainsaws, but you can basically get any other power weapon. Power swords, axes and lightning claws, frost axes, swords and wolf claws, chain fists and power fists, and thunder hammers. Much like the other squad, I really like the thunder hammers and power fists and chain fists on these guys, as they just mean that you don't have to worry too much. The squad will just be a decent threat to literally anything it touches, whether that's heavy infantry, light infantry, or vehicles. With the Hunters Unleashed rule making them a lot better than normal chain fists and power fists due to countering their -1 to hit that they have innately. These really are top tier choices on Space Wolf units of any sort, and again I'd certainly routinely give a power fist or thunder hammer to the Wolfguard Pack Leader. Has 4 attacks with a thunder hammer, hitting on 3s are no joke at all for 16 points. In addition to this, you can have 1 Terminator with a heavy weapon for every 5 models in the squad. That's the Assault Cannon Heavy Flamer or Cyclone Missile Launcher. Of the 3, the Cyclone Missile Launcher is by far my favourite. 32 points for 2 missiles, plus the option to fire them on frag mode, and also you retain the Stormbolter, which is great on Terminators. That can add a little bit of long range anti-tank punch, and really isn't all that expensive for what you get. I'm still not sure I'd necessarily field them routinely, as most of the time the squad just wants to be getting into close combat where you won't be using it, but you're really not hurting yourself too much by including one. So let's talk a little bit more about getting more out of Wolfguard on the table. Naturally, as they have a lot of decent close combat weapons, they synergize amazingly with Hunters Unleashed and Savage Fury for those extra attacks, and they're a little bit more likely to be hanging around until Battle Round 3, due to both squads having the option to be put in Deep Strike, due to both of them being able to access Deep Strike, the standard Wolfguard via jump packs. In terms of character support, Wolfguard are pretty much one of the units that are best for eating up the various melee buffs that can be given to them via the Space Wolf Codex. Obviously rerolls from Logan, Battle Leaders or Wolf Lords are great, and in particular Arjak Rockfist has some amazing synergy for them, as he not only gives reroll 1s to wound, but he also gives them an additional attack as well. Arjak is an incredibly solid choice to be running next to Wolfguard. Wolf Priests with their new Listeners can be handy as well, either with rerolling hits in close combat, or perhaps more relevantly, if the Wolfguard manage to deep strike next to a Chaplain with the +2 to charge litany, it gives them a far better chance of getting into close combat, and unlike things like Wolfen who have to outflank to try and get their deep strike, the Wolfguard can just come in anywhere, so are far more flexible. Wolf Priests could also potentially help heal the Terminators as well, which is no bad thing. To be able to further buff their charges, things like Ragnar or being near the Wolfen can certainly help. Rerolling charges will save you command points, and any more reliability to get into combat is good, and also certain relics and sagas can also potentially help them. My favourite being the Wolfenstone, which again can give them +1 attack in close combat if they're right next to the bearer. If you did manage to synergize them with both a Wolf Lord with the Wolfenstone and Arjak Rockfist, then each Wolfguard will be spitting out 5 attacks on the charge, and they'll be able to reroll 1s in both hits and wounds. This well over doubles the damage of the squad in close combat. For example, if you had a Wolfguard squad of 5 Terminators charging with Power Fists, they on average do about 9 wounds to an Imperial Knight. With Arjak and the Wolfenstone Wolflord, they'd average a crazy 19 wounds against the same Knight, and that's literally just when it's a minimum sized squad of Wolfguard armed with nothing but Power Fists. In addition, if they're next to Logan Grimnar as well, then they get to ignore morale tests, I think all of this boils down to the fact that if you have a big unit of Wolfguard, then they can get absolutely silly damage potential if you combine them with a few buffing characters. In terms of transport options, the Terminators generally aren't going to need anything, due to them being able to teleport where they need to be for free. There's no reason that you couldn't load them into a Storm Wolf or a Land Raider or something, but I'm just not really sure that it's needed. The power armoured Wolfguard can actually make a lot better use of transports in my opinion. If they're not jump packing their way into battle, then they really could use some sort of delivery system. That could be a drop pod, which means they could pile out for a first turn storm boltering and charge, rhinos or razorbacks to truck it up the board, or maybe the Storm Wolf or Stormfang to get a big squad of them all ready for a turn 2 charge. As we mentioned in the last video, Wolfguard are a pretty decent one for the Stormfang's limited transport capacity, as you can pack in quite a lot of hurt in just 5 power armoured models. In terms of stratagems, the Wolfguard have a lot of good options, as a lot of the stuff in Codex Space Wolves is combat orientated. Firstly, for the power armoured variant, you can use the Cunning of the Wolf stratagem to outflank them, and that's certainly one way of getting them to deliver into battle, although even with storm shields they're not quite as hardy as some of the other options, and if they don't make their charge then they might have the chance of getting gunned down. Keen Senses is always a reasonable option, particularly if you are packing a lot of storm bolters in the squad. If you have anything with ludicrous minus to hit modifiers such as Eldar Rangers, then it could be good for keeping them accurate. Lone Wolf is a very solid option on this Wolfguard pack leader that already has 3 attacks. If you do find yourself in the fortunate position to have your Wolfguard squad gunned down but your pack leader still alive, then 1 command point is excellent for increasing its wounds by 2, making it a character, and getting it to reroll failed hit and wound rolls. This could be absolutely hilariously brutal on a Thunderhammer Wolfguard, and if the enemy is not careful, then they could create themselves some sort of super smash captain within their own lines. It would actually make me a little bit more tempted to include a Storm Shield on the pack leader, just to give him maximal chance of surviving, to use this stratagem. Finally, from the main book, Untitled Chapter is also very good, as you can create really big units of Wolfguard with a bunch of power weapons, then fighting again can be really powerful, and also gain them a little bit more movement up the board, maybe to lock up other units as well. From the Saga of the Beast book, some of the most useful ones are Hammer of Wrath if you have some jump pack Wolfguard. A few extra mortal wounds rarely goes amiss. Steady Advance could allow some power armoured Wolfguard to move and fire their storm bolters and still use bolter discipline. Countercharge is great if you can ever get it to surprise your opponent with an additional fight phase. And of course the old favourite Transhuman Physiology couldn't be more relevant on Wolfguard, as they're only toughness 4, they'll be wounded on 3s by most of your opponent's heavy weapons, and blunting their attacks against one of your scariest units is certainly a way to frustrate them. If you build these guys in a pretty big decent squad, then they're certainly one that you can justify using lots of stratagems on, and you could make them one of the main hammer blows of your Space Wolf list. Also the new Fury of the Champions one, for 1 command point to add 1 to your hit rolls to the Wolfguard Terminators, could squeeze you out a fair bit more damage. If you do need more damage out of the unit, and you could get away with using this rather than having to pay 3 command points to fight twice, then it's not a bad idea. And of course if you absolutely want to get every bit of damage, you could combine this with fighting twice. So how would I use the Space Wolf Wolfguard on the tabletop then? I think that they do run fairly differently depending on whether they're the power armoured type or the Wolfguard type. If we look at power armour first, I would typically arm most of them with storm bolters and storm shields, and then keep 2 or 3 melee specialists armed with either power fists or thunderhammers. I think jump packs are a perfectly reasonable upgrade for them, though throwing them in a drop pod and jumping them down turn 1 to get all of that nastiness straight into the enemy's face right away is really not a bad idea. You could thin out a bunch of hordes with their storm bolters, then hope for the charge with a command reroll, and if you get in you could deal some serious damage. Outflanking them would also be fine, as would throwing them in a Rhino or a Storm Wolf. There really are quite a few different ways that you can go. The Wolfguard Terminators I would also advocate keeping a healthy proportion of them with Storm Shields and Storm Bolters, just literally to tank hits, as with a 2+ save and a 3+ invul save, they're actually really quite cheap for the amount of damage that they can soak up, and aren't even all that bad in terms of range damage output. When these guys are tanking wounds for some very scary ones with Thunderhammers in the back, you could have a ludicrously durable and reasonably cheap squad that can still do all the damage it needs to in the fight phase. And I honestly think that they could be a very strong unit for the Space Wolves. I think you honestly can make the unit as big or as small as you want. I've heard of people using things like 5 Wolfguard, where 4 of them are Storm Bolter and Storm Shield, and the Wolfguard pack leader has the Storm Shield and Thunderhammer. This gives you a really quite cheap unit for just over 150 points. It has a reasonable amount of anti-infantry firepower, a very nasty Thunderhammer in close combat, and more importantly is an absolute pain for the opponent to get rid of, as almost nothing that shoots them will be particularly efficient against them. These are the sort of guys that I'd use as a minimum distraction threat, but if you wanted to really focus a strategy around Wolf Guard, I'd basically think about doubling the proportions of this squad, just taking maybe 6 or 7 with the Stormbolters and Storm Shields, and then 3 with Stormbolter and Thunderhammer, or Thunderhammer and Storm Shield. You could even think about putting a Cyclone missile launcher on one of your Thunderhammer dudes, as behind that amount of decent armour and force fields, it's likely to be firing for a fair amount of time. If you're going with a big scary squad like this, I'd certainly want to do some sort of support for them when they come in via Deep Strike, maybe a Chaplain to give them a boosted charge, and things like Wolf Guards or Arjack to come in with them and give them some rerolls. I honestly think that with the Terminator Armour, Storm Shield and Stormbolter option, tanking for a few strong Thunderhammers, they could genuinely be used as a main battle line unit. They're maybe not quite as brutally damaging as some of our other options such as Wolfen, but they're just incredibly tanky point for point, with light anti-infantry weapons being hit by 2+ armour and high AP weapons being hit by 3+ invul save. With a deep striking Terminator unit like this, I'd be wanting them to jump down either turn 2 or turn 3. Turn 2 is great to get damage in earlier and get some extra AP with the Stormbolters in the squad, but turn 3 could be worth waiting for to get access to Savage Fury to really boost up their close combat prowess. Plus you might also have eliminated a few more screens by then if all is going to plan. As with all deep striking units, if you can jump them into cover then it's great, and if you can charge in, delete a unit then wrap and trap another then it's also great, or at the very least you could try and aim to finish your close combat in cover or on an objective if possible. I'd certainly be thinking about things like Fury of the Champions to get more damage output out of them, and maybe even Honour the Chapter if it's a big crucial turn and you might be able to kill a few more units for a few command points. I'd say that the Wolfguard's main competitor in terms of rivals are the Wolfen in the Space Wolf decks. Both of them can be big Death Star sort of ludicrously damaging units, brandishing Thunderhammers and Storm Shields. I think that both of them honestly have their good points. The Terminators have their 2+ armour and native deep strike and some shooting. The Wolfen have their faster movement, 5+ feel no pain, and better damage output once they actually get into melee. I honestly think that they're both decently viable. I do think that Wolfguard is certainly a strong option in the Space Wolf list, and can absolutely rival the Wolfen and the Thunderwolf Cavalry as some of our main damage dealers, particularly when combined with the excellent Arjack Rockfist. If you've got any thoughts on using the Wolfguard, or if you've had any builds that specifically work well for you, then please let me know down in the comments. It's always good to get more first-hand experience. And if you'd like to see more Space Wolf videos, then feel free to subscribe to Auspex Tactics, we will be having plenty more coming out over the coming month. If you'd like to help support the channel and the creation of new videos, I do have a Patreon page down in the description below. As well as helping more videos happen, there are a few other incentives for being a Patreon member, such as getting access to some of the videos early, voting on what comes next for the channel, and the occasional prize draw. So if any of that sounds interesting to you, then please give it a look. In any case, a big thank you for listening, and I'll hope to see you guys next time.